everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be working on block 8, the butterfly block for the Riley Blake block challenge. And this looks like it's going to be a pretty simple block, so I'm really excited about it. Now, let's take a look at what we're going to be doing with this block. Okay, so this block is only comprised of 3 different fabrics. So the last one here, the La Creme, I think I've been calling it both, is the background color that has been pretty much used on all the blocks. If you remember from my first video through this series, I'm using a bunch of different cream backgrounds because I just wanted to use kind of stuff that I had on hand, and I was going to use the folktail fabric. So just 3 different fabrics here. And actually, initially when I was pulling the fabric for this block, I pulled these 3. So I was going to be using this top one for the background, the cream. And then as you can see, it's kind of a yellow here. And I haven't used this yellow much since the beginning when I started doing these blocks. So I was like, okay, it's really probably time to pull this back in. So I'm going to be using this fabric for the curry. And because this one kind of had a brown tone to it, I thought maybe I'll use this brown for the pebble. And I do think it's maybe more gray, but I thought it'd be fun looking since it's a butterfly for the kind of mimic stripes in the butterfly. So I had pulled these 3 out, and then I started thinking, okay, I haven't used the yellow in a while, that curry color. So let me pull my blocks and see which ones had the yellow in it. So I used it here in this block and in this one, and you can see they both have a lot of blues in it, but this one did have some green. So I decided, instead of doing the brown, to bring the green back in, just to kind of, you know, tie these blocks together a little more. I'm starting to get enough of them where I think I'm gonna start looking at the blocks more and seeing what I had paired together before, and kind of make sure I'm bringing this quilt together cohesively, since I'm not using the exact same fabrics that are listed in the materials for this challenge. So just something you might want to think about too when you're piecing your blocks together. If you're not using the exact same fabrics that were mentioned in the challenge and you're pulling in your own, it just might be a way to make sure you're making sure everything goes together nicely. So I'm going to get my fabrics ironed, and then we'll go through the steps of cutting the fabric for this pattern. Okay, so to start cutting, I pretty much always lay my fabric down on my mat, and if I have my fabric folded, I always try to meet up the fold with one of my lines to help me keep everything straight. And then I will square up one end of my fabric and then cut the strip the width I need for whatever pattern pieces I'm cutting. So this, for the curry, we're going to need only 1 6-inch square. So I'm going to go over to 6 inches, make sure my lines are lined up, and cut. And since I'm not going to need to cut anything any other sizes, I'm just going to fold up the rest of my fabric and set it to the side. And I don't need 2 squares this time around. Normally I would just square up the bottom here and then cut whatever sizes I need if I need more than 1. But since I only need 1, I'm going to open it up and just cut 1, because I can save this fabric piece to cut other size squares that I need for any other patterns that are released in this challenge. So here is my 1 6-inch, and then next we're going to be cutting from the pebble. I usually, when I'm doing the cutting instructions, try to go in order, if there's a lot of things I'm going to be needing to cut when I finish one, I'll usually put like a little mark next to it so I know that I've finished those cuts. And then if on a certain fabric, if there's like more than one different cuts that I need to do, when I finish the whole fabric in that color, I'll put a mark next to that, just to keep everything as organized as possible. That's just something that I like to do. So next we're going to be cutting the color that is listed as Pebble. So I'm going to fold my fabric, line it up with one of the lines on my mat, and kind of make sure it's even, especially with fabrics that are directional like this, like have lines and stuff. You really want to try to get it as even as you can so that your fabric doesn't look all wonky. It's kind of weird for me to say that because I'm kind of like, when it comes to different things. There's some things I worry about, I guess, and some that I don't. I'm not going to spend the time getting even something like this perfect, but I will try to line it up so the straight lines kind of look like they're going straight. So at least to the eye, where it might look a little more even. So we're cutting 2 5.5-inch squares here. So I'm not going to unfold my fabric this time. I'm going to leave it together so I can just cut both of those 2 5.5-inch squares together. So 5.5. Now, it's always important to look through your pattern first, because if these are going to be half square triangles or something like that, and you prefer having wiggle room to trim them down, make sure you look at the pattern first so that you know if you need to add a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch to make sure that you have enough room to trim your half square triangles down to size. Now this one is going to be used for the bottom of the butterfly. So you're just going to be kind of adding on the squares along the edges to make that shape. And typically it looks like you're just going to be sewing corner to corner, so you should be fine on these. But the 6-inch square is going to be made into half square triangles with the background fabric. And if you notice, you're going to be trimming these half square triangles down into 5.5 inches. So if you're cutting 6.5 inches, you're going to be pretty close on making sure you need to sew pretty accurately. So if you struggle with half square triangles and getting them to the accurate size, you could always add like a 1/4 inch to it. So cut 6.25-inch square. That way you can just trim it down and have it the perfect size. So just a little tip there that I've done before when I had trouble getting my half square triangles right. All right, so let's get the last fabric cut. And line that up. And this time we're going to cut one more, we're going to cut one more 6-inch square, and then we're going to cut 6 3-inch squares. So what I'll do is cut the 6-inch strip first and cut that 6-inch square, and then I should be able to get all the rest of the little 3-inch squares pretty easily. I keep hitting my ruler and misaligning it. So get that cut and square up the bottom of the strip. And then I'll open this up and get my 6-inch square. This is my favorite ruler. I use it almost all the time. I can almost get all the cuts I want with it because it's long enough. And for the blocks, cutting I can almost always get long enough across my strips. And I do have other ones that I like using as well. I have a bunch of square rulers, but this one is the one I seem to almost always use all of the time. And I think I just got it from Walmart too. So now I'm going to cut down my 3-inch strips for those smaller, and I think I needed 6. Yeah, 6. So I should be able to get 2 from each of those. And so I'll just need 1 more. And then I should be able to just cut these in half since it was 6 inches wide, because math says I should be able to, but I will always check and make sure the other is the right size, because, you know, sometimes our cutting measurements are not always right, as accurate as we had hoped they would be. So we actually have finally an easy weekend this weekend because my daughter doesn't have any soccer games. Last weekend she had 2, and they were each an hour to an hour and a half away from our house. So that kind of just, it takes up the whole day because she has to be there 45 minutes before the game starts. And then, you know, the game length and everything. But this weekend we have a free weekend, but next weekend she has a tournament, and that tournament's like 3 hours away. So I won't be getting a lot done that weekend. So hopefully I can get caught up otherwise and have some videos already ready to go for you guys, because there's going to be no getting anything done that tournament weekend. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the sewing instructions, and the yellow, the curry fabric, along with the background fabric are going to make those half square triangles at the top of the butterfly. So what I do is I'm going to pair them together, and I'm going to use my Duck Duck Go tape for doing diagonal piecing. I really like marking my fabric, but I have found that all of my marking pencils that I have right now, I need to order some new ones, have been not treating me well. And I cannot get these pencils that I got in the fat quarter shop box, the Sew Sampler, to sharpen. They just, it keeps crumbling. So that has been a real bummer. And I really love this friction fine liner pen that I got, but the ink is almost already out of it. So I've been using my Duck Duck Go tape and practicing with that, and I'm actually really starting to like it because I don't have to spend the time marking all these. So what I'll show you and walk you through how I line it up with that tape. But basically what we're going to do is corner to corner, we're going to be sewing a 1/4 inch away from what would be the center line on each side. So there'll be 2 lines 1/2 inch away from each other. Then we'll cut down the middle of this block and square it up to make sure it's the 5.5 inch 2 squares that we need in the end. So with these, what we're going to be doing is sewing some more background squares onto each corner. So we're going to start with just 2 sides, and we'll be sewing right across the diagonal, trimming off and pressing them open. So I'm going to try to make sure I sew them where the lines across the blocks are going straight across. So I don't want one to end up with the lines going up and down and then one going side to side. So we're going to try and get that right. And yeah, so I'm going to show you how to use the DuckDuckGo tape and sew these. This is going to come together really quickly, you guys. So, all right, let's keep going on it. Okay, so we're going to start with the half square triangle we're making. So I have right sides together. Make sure everything's all lined up. So this is kind of a longer block than I'm used to doing, because normally I can see that the other end is lined up with my 1/4 inch line here. So I'm kind of like, what should I not do it with this? Should I go mark? So I'm just gonna see what I can do here. I was really hoping to show you guys how nicely this tape works. I guess I'm just gonna see. Oh, I did so good, you guys. So see, what you would normally have is the other end of your square, making sure that it's lined up with the 1/4 inch mark. I'm hitting stuff. Wow, I don't know how I managed to get that to work out properly, but I did. So yay. So I can show you a little bit better on this one. So this time we're going to be going straight down the middle. So I'm going to use the red line here. For the half square triangles, when I'm doing on either side of the middle line, I usually follow the 1/4 inch lines, but this one I'm going to follow the middle line. So I'll line up my needle at the middle where I'm going corner to corner, and then make sure my other end is lined up on the red line so that I'm going corner to corner. And what you want to do is more, so normally I would watch the needle and where I'm lined up if I'm following marked lines. But on this, you want to watch the end and make sure you're staying straight and kind of following, making sure that corner is at the line. So there you go. So now we're going to go ahead and get our other one done. I need to make sure the square is lined up. Oh, I hit my finger. What am I doing? Too busy watching down here instead of where my hands are going. Okay, so I have the needle lined up at the corner, and then I'm going to be going and keeping an eye that my other corner is staying lined up where it needs to be. All right, so on these squares, what I would do is cut off the ends and press them open, and then we're going to keep adding the other squares around to get 3 sides done. And then this block, though, we still need to sew down our other side here. So I'm going to make sure I got this lined up the best that I can. And then see, when I get up here, my point needs to be kind of lined up against that 1/4 inch line. Well, we did pretty good. I should have marked this just to make sure I got it right. All right, so we're gonna go and trim up these blocks, and then we'll have to finish sewing our bottom of the butterfly. Okay, so to start, I'm going to use my Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer to trim my half square triangle. So I'm going to cut corner to corner, and then I'm going to line up my trimmer with the 5.5 inch stitch line, and that lined up, and then I'm going to trim the sides, and then I'm going to cut across those slots on the edges. Okay, and so then I can press that open, and I have a perfect half square triangle. Then I'm going to do the same on the other one. And these little slots on the side are not nice because they take the dog ears off the corner of this block. So there's that one. Okay, so now for the other blocks, we are gonna need to trim off the end piece. So I like using a template that I have that has a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It just allows me to make sure I'm not cutting off, you know, too much, and that side will just get pressed open. But I mean, you don't have to use you can just eyeball it. You don't have to use something fancy to cut it off or anything. So I'm going to cut these off, and then we're going to press our seams and then look at where we're placing our next squares on that bottom block. Now, sometimes in your pattern, it'll show you what way to press your seams. So it looks like on the half square triangle squares, it's wanting us to press our seams to the yellow side. That's what I would typically do anyways, just because I like to usually press my fabric to the darker side. But I will say that I've learned that that's not always the best practice, and oftentimes in patterns you should follow what it says and rather than what you really like it to do, because it'll really help with bulk in the seams and everything. But hey, sometimes I don't always do the right thing when it comes to quilting. But just so you know, if this is one of your first times working on a pattern, that's often what those little arrows mean. It's telling you which way to press your seams, and sometimes they'll have them in 2 directions, and that means to press your seam open. All right, so I have those pressed to the side, and then here I'm wanting to make sure that these are going directionally. So let me see on here. It looks like we're pressing naturally out. So that's where it's wanting to go for me anyway. And now we're going to be adding the next squares on. So I'm going to add mine on to the top corners here. And then we're going to be sewing from corner to corner again and doing the same steps and cutting off the ends and pressing it open. All right, so I'm going to be sewing just like before, corner to corner on this block. It is really coming together so quickly. Get the other one on here. Make sure I'm meeting up with the needle and the red line down here, and just sew across. And then I will quickly trim and press these corners, and we'll sew on the last 2 blocks. Okay, so since our half square triangles are done too, we can go ahead and sew that top row together that has our curry on it. And this is how you're going to be placing them together, kind of where your background fabric forms a V in the center. So you fold them together, and we're just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam down the side of this block. Okay, and so then I have the bottom row ready to go, and I can sew the last 2 detail pieces on, getting these corners done on the curry block. Oh, I have something bunching. Why? Not sure what's going on. Oh, I ran out of bobbin thread. That's why. I have some extra bobbin thread here, so not to worry. I can switch that out quickly. sure this row did finish. All right, so let's go ahead and finish this one now. Get everything lined up. It should be good now that I have actual thread in there. Get these two finished, and then I'll be able to quickly sew this block together. All right, so once we get these trimmed and folded, we're just going to be sewing this row together down the middle like we did the other one, and then we're going to be sewing the top and bottom row together. I mean, this block really comes together quickly. I think this butterfly block would be really, really cute on a little baby quilt. Okay, so before I sew the bottom block together, I want to show you guys something. So I noticed when I was finished with these two squares that I could put them together with both green fabric lines going up and down, or I could turn them and have them going across like I originally planned. So you'll have to let me know in the comments if you like it better across or going up, because I'm curious, but to my eye, I feel like I ended up liking it going up and down better, but I'm curious to see what you guys might think. So I'm going to sew it together this way, even though it wasn't the way that I had originally planned, and I hope that I don't make the wrong choice. But what I'm going to do on this block is I'm going to put a pin where this seams meet to kind of get them, try to get them to line up nicely. And just so you know, for this block, I pushed the seam allowance to the left. So on this block, once I sew it, I'm going to push it to the right so that I can nest these seams. Okay, so I'm going to press this open. And once I get that seam pressed nicely, we are going to bring this block together. And so I'm just going to lay these right sides together. And the main seam I worry about is this center one, but since we nested them, they should come together quite nicely. But I am going to place a few pins just to make sure everything stays lined up. And we'll place one here. So I'm just going to sew across there and then press the block open. It shows to press the seam down toward the bottom of the block, so that's what I'll do. But look at that, came together so fast, you guys. All right, you guys, so this butterfly block was a quick block to make. So what do you think of it? I think I got the straight lines lined up pretty well. There's just a little bit where they come together, but I mean, that's honestly just being really nitpicky, I think. So I think it's a really beautiful block. Like I said, I think it would be a fun way to use up some scrap fabrics and put together a bunch of butterfly blocks for a quilt for a new baby. It would be a really cute baby quilt, I think. So this was a fun block, you guys, the butterfly block. It's another one that I could definitely envision being on a full quilt. So there is that block, and here are the other blocks that I have so far. That was the butterfly block was block 8, so these are some of the last block, the other blocks in this challenge, not in any particular order, just so you can see how they're coming along with the folktail fabric. This was block 7, I remember, because it was just the last one I did. A flower block, but it has been a lot of fun, and these blocks are completely free. I will link to the challenge in the description, but you can go and print whatever blocks you would like. You don't have to do them all. If you see one that you really like and you just want to learn that block and do a quilt out of it, you absolutely can. So it's free. New blocks are posted every Tuesday of the month, except for the last Tuesday. You get kind of a break there. You can try and get caught up. So let me know what you guys think in the comments of this block. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, you guys, bye. I'll see you then.